Good morning, everybody. It's Bryan Hornung and Reginald Andre with the Security Squawk podcast. Welcome to another episode. I think this is like episode 37, right?
Yep.
37 already? Wow.
Yeah.
Man, we're almost going to have a year under our belt pretty soon here. I don't know. So it's the podcast. You're watching the live recording of our podcast. We do upload this to all your favorite podcast platforms. But you are watching the live recording today, and every time that we do a show, we record it live on YouTube and Facebook. And we thank you for your support. Make sure you download us on your favorite platforms. I think we're on like Amazon, Audible. We're on Audible. We're on Google Podcasts. We are on iTunes. We are on iHeartRadio. We're on every single one that you could possibly imagine. Download us there, share us out to your friends and family. If you learn anything on this show, that's all we ask. It's the only fee that we charge to bring you insight and information around cybersecurity and how it impacts you as an employee of a business and also as a business owner. I mean, we break it down to a lot of different levels on this show. And without further ado, welcome. And you had a good weekend, right? So we made it through Labor Day weekend without a major cyber attack in the news, right?
Right. Although I did take my laptop just in case, ready to help out or monitor situations.
Now that's funny. So I predicted that nothing would happen over the weekend. I predicted it. Did I predict it on the podcast last week, right?
Yeah.
I did say it. And I predicted it on my YouTube channel. I threw out a video on Friday where I said, the title of it was "Will Something Happen?" It's the same thing I did over July 4th. But over July 4th, I was significantly more confident that something was about to go down, based on just my observation of what I see on the dark web, which I tend to frequent a lot doing security research. And this time around, I just didn't feel like it was anything was going on. There's definitely a bigger retooling phase happening right now. I don't know what that means, but there's a bigger retooling phase going on right now than what we've typically seen in the past. And what I mean by that is simply ransomware groups are breaking up left and right, and they're disappearing, and they're kind of coming back, but they're coming back in not the normal ways. And then we have this one group out here, this Ragnar, who's basically now they're basically coming out and threatening people and basically saying, if you go to the authorities, we're going to do all this other bad stuff to you. It's, it's not going to be just ransomware and asking for, money from you. They're going to take it up a notch. So they say. So it's the cyber criminal world is getting interesting to say the least, but we'll dive into that in the show. The important thing is you had a nice, restful, and relaxing weekend, just like I did. And we cherished those in this world and in business. So you want to share with our audience what you did and what you did over the Labor Day weekend while you weren't battling cyber criminals or the threat thereof?
Yeah. So I'm in Miami, and there's Naples, which is about 2 hours away, and that's where some of my family members live. So visited them, and did a dinner round table, and it was really, really fun, good times. I hadn't seen some of them in 2 years, so it was really, really good that we were able to just get back as a family and just break bread together.
Very nice. I laid low. I stayed home. Did the staycation kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Although I do have to say I enjoy Topgolf. I really enjoy Topgolf. I've been visiting Topgolf probably way too much, but I enjoy it more so than golf because it doesn't take I can go to Topgolf for an hour or two. It doesn't take up 4 hours of my life, and right now in my life, I 4 hours is a lot of time for me to do any one thing. So But I have been getting on the golf course a lot more than I have in the past, so that's also a good thing. So, but yeah, my kid and I, we went to actually both my kids and my wife and I went to Top Golf on Sunday, and then I took my team out to Top Golf on Friday. We all cut out early on Friday and headed over to Top Golf for some team building golfing. We have some good golfers and we have some really bad golfers on my team here. So it's a good mix of people, but we all work together. We try to help each other just like we do in the office. You know, the good golfers try to help the bad golfers, and I'm in the middle. Sometimes I'm good and sometimes I'm bad. So today we're going to talk about what do we got on tap today, Andre? We're going to talk about some interesting comments or insight that we got from the Insurance Journal about cyber insurance. I think that's important for businesses to start understanding why things are changing, what's important around cyber insurance. And we'll go through some interesting data and comments in this article that I found in the Insurance Journal. And then we're going to jump over to this report. It's kind of related to the cyber insurance, quite frankly, because it's information that this threat researcher company, Kayla, has observed, and basically doing, it sounds like a lot of the stuff that I like to do, but it seems like they do it as their business. They do this threat research and cyber threat intelligence. And they research these dark websites, right, Andre? And, you know, they research all the chatter and communication that goes on out there. And the difference between the dark web and the regular web or the web that the surface web, the web that everybody's used to, is like there's no Google. You can't go on the dark web and just Google and, you know, hey, what's this hacking group's website, or how do I find this on the dark web? You basically need to know the address. It was very much like that in the, you know, mid 90s to late 90s, where you needed to know specific addresses to get to certain things. And the dark web is very much like that. They're trying to put together search engines for the dark web, and there are some out there, and there's one that I know of that's very good. But if you don't know a lot of these URLs for these criminal hackers, where they operate from, usually we get those through research. We look at addresses that are put in ransomware notes and stuff like that, and we start to piece together where these groups are living on the dark web. But then you have these forums and these hacking sites and things like that. And this is what this group has looked at. It's looked at both the hackers' infrastructure, their websites, what they have out there, plus these kind of independent forums where hackers get together and share information. They work together on hacking, or they sell their services or buy services for other specialties within the hacking realm, right? So and a quick example of that would be, if I'm really good at getting into networks, I may sell my services to get into your network, so you can then, you know, do what you want to do, which might be deploy ransomware or put out some other piece of malware out there. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to dive into some really interesting data, and give everybody kind of a look at what goes on the dark web and how these guys are planning and plotting to attack you. So speaking of attacks, let's jump into, I'm going to share my screen here, Andre, and I'm going to share the cyber insurance article that they have here. And cyber underwriting changes is too little too late. Well, it's never too little too late in the insurance world. They can always figure out how to make money, as long as they can adjust. And yeah, they might be behind the eight ball a little bit, but I still think they're going into a place where they're going to remain profitable. And they basically said that through 2018, cyber insurance portfolios were very profitable.
Right.
And then in 2019 and 2020, things have changed, right? And that's simply because, you know, my experience is that back in 97 through 2018, your ransom demands were a few $1,000s, if that, right? Sometimes they were $500 if it was just like one computer. And these guys realized that we can encrypt like a whole entire network and basically bring a business to its knees, and we can ask for millions of dollars and get it. And that's when, 2019 was the first multi-million-dollar ransomware event. So we're only 2 years into these like big ransomware number types of events. And I'm going to make another prediction. um, we're going to go back to how it was before 2018, before this is all said and done. I think the days of multi-billion or $1 million ransom demands are coming to a swift end. But I do think that businesses will still have to deal with this at a somewhat of a nuisance level, depending on your business and how healthy your business is. Some of these demands may seem devastating, but we're going to get to a point where most businesses and most insurance companies aren't going to cry foul. And I believe that that's going to be because there's too much heat right now doing it the way that they're doing it, asking for these kinds of numbers. So I think in order for this to sustain and maintain, it will go back to, it may not go back to 500 or 1,000, but it'll go back to 10,000, 50,000. I don't think we're going to see them coming out of the gate asking for millions of dollars unless they know they have like a massive company and they can get away with it and it's going to get paid. But I think because of the news and it being out there and people actually doing something because it's in the news is going to result in higher cyber defenses, making it harder for these guys to do this stuff. So they're going to see that not being in the news and not their activities not being sensationalized like they are today is going to be a better business play long term than what we're seeing here. So that's just my prediction. I just don't see the multi-million-dollar ransom demands being sustainable over a long period of time when you're irking the ire of federal government and the people are asking the government to do something about it. When it gets to that level, you've taken it too far. But if you take it down a notch, you're going to be playing in an area where people are not going to be upset enough to where they want government intervention. And once you take that element out of it, then I think it's going to still remain a problem, a very common problem, but the numbers that they're asking for are going to come down, which will then allow the insurance companies to still playing the game like they want to play, and stuff like that. So the interesting things that come out of this are they talk about municipalities and law firms having historically weak network security environments that can be exploited. Like the insurance industry has a lot of data on where the problems are, right? And me, Andre, and that we've kind of made the decision. We didn't kind of. I did make the decision to walk away from law firms as somebody that we target in our own business for cybersecurity. It's just because they don't get it. They don't take it seriously. Nobody's making them do this. They're not threatened by the fact that they could have an ethics investigation or be disbarred as a result of a cyber attack. And because there's no governance or no compliance in that industry around cybersecurity, we don't see law firms engaging with cybersecurity companies at the level that we should. And the insurance industry has the data to back that up. Right? We know municipalities are weak, right? They're governed, they're taxpayer funded, usually by property taxes or some kind of local tax, right? But law firms are not in that realm. They have the money to invest in this stuff. They don't have to go back to the town and raise taxes to pay for and afford these things.
Mhm.
They just make a conscious decision to not invest into cybersecurity the way that you need to. And I'm not calling them out. This article, the insurance industry is calling them out. I'm just using my experience and I'm saying, yeah, this is a problem over here in the law firm industry. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm going to back it up a little tiny because it's interesting on your opinion on that the I guess the level of impact that they're going to be doing the ransomware demands. But at the moment, the insurance companies are still paying, right?
Yep.
And the government, they listed the 10 or so industries, or that they told the bad guys not to do. But the way I see it, and I don't have any data to kind of just my opinion as well, is more like they're retooling. They're just going to basically refocus themselves. So like kind of like what you said, they're going to be under the radar and they're going to be asking for demands where it's not going to be making the national headlines, but it's still going to be happening. Just like if one of our customers that are just local businesses in our respective areas, they're not going to go to their local station to report this. They're just going to say, how do we do this internally so our clients don't find out, and how do we kind of just move on from it? So it's interesting. It's interesting what you're saying, but at the same time, I think that as long as the insurance companies are paying, that they're going to they're not looking for new careers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think number one, this is going away anytime soon. We're still going to see millions of dollars in ransom demands for at
Mhm.
least the next year. But over time, as the heat gets turned up, as these cyber criminals find it more difficult to operate, and they see the attention that these types of attacks cause for them, and then they see because look, the smaller end cyber attacks are still occurring. You're just not seeing them in the news, right?
Mhm.
So they're not just going after these big companies like Colonial Pipeline and JBS and getting paid, and that's the only people that they're hitting. They're hitting small businesses all the time. They're hitting medium-sized businesses all the time. They're not making the news. So you don't know about it. You don't hear about it, but they do it. These ransom demands are not in the millions. They're in the tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands.
Mhm.
These numbers will probably come down a little bit, maybe 30, 40, 50%, but we're going to still see them in that area at a higher frequency than we're seeing today.
Right.
And that's going to continue to happen. So, and then what your thoughts here on what I brought up a minute ago about a specific industry? Do you have any insight on that? Do you agree or disagree with that? Because I mean, that's just my own experience with, you know, getting in front of law firms, speaking to law firms. I don't know if you have a similar experience or not, or you
No,
just
no, it's the same. They're not regulated. They don't have to do anything, and then they also have to perceive that a lot of the work that they do is public records, anyways. Depending on their on their practice. And I get that a lot. It's like, well, everything I do, I have to upload it to the court system and just black out the social security numbers, or if it's a minor, but everything else I do is public record, so it doesn't matter. And I think that's the mindset. So yeah, for us in our business, we go after industries that are regulated, and therefore they have to do it, and they have to spend the money.
right. So, and so here we have an industry, the insurance industry, that collects data on businesses when you fill out an application, and now they're getting these applications back and they're looking at these answers and they're going, holy crap, these law firms like do nothing for cybersecurity. Right. So now that coupled with the fact that they have to get involved when there's a ransomware event, and it's happening in more increased basis, and these numbers are going higher and higher, the I guess knee jerk reaction, or what the industry says that they're doing, is 10 is the new 25, meaning that if you were able to get 25 million in coverage before, you're not getting it now, you're getting 10.
Mm-hmm.
Right, with the idea being that if these cyber criminals know what your insurance policy is, then they know that they can ask for a ridiculous amount of money if you have 25 million. But if we can cap you at 10, which we will, the likelihood of you having to pay out more than 10 million significantly goes down, because you're going to tell the criminal hacker that we just don't have 25 million to give you. We can only give you, 10. So that's one way they can drive it down. But, they're going to see 10 go to 5, right, before this is all said and done.
Yeah.
And they're already saying it. They're, it's in this article where they're basically saying those limits are going to go down to 5 million, right? So, if you're a business that does $1 million or less, why would I need 5 million in coverage? Yeah, you won't, right? You probably be good with 1 or 2 million.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing 5 million a year in revenue, or 10 million or more, that 5 million is not going to cover much, right?
Right.
And that's going to probably put you out of business if that's your only option to get yourself out of jail when the cyber criminals come banging on your door. The other interesting thing that I found in this article is, obviously, rates are going up by 30 to 50%. They also point that out. But the rate, and they're going in here and they're saying the rate is not the only answer. And then they dive into, asking more questions. They want to know more information about your cybersecurity controls. That's how they're going to make decisions on whether you get insurance or not. That's what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing today is they're asking these questions, and either you're doing enough where we'll give you a policy, or you're not doing enough and you're not getting a policy. There's no in between. You're doing 50% of what we need, so we're going to give you a policy, but it's going to be, basically on the high end of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really what's going on. The amount you pay is based on the risk level of your industry, and then whether you're doing enough or not determines whether you get a policy or not. So it's almost like, based on your revenue size and the industry you're in, there's a fixed number for your rate for that, right? And they know what that's going to be, somewhere between this and this for this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just look at your controls and say, okay, yes, you're doing enough, or no, you're not doing enough, so you're denied the policy. You don't get a policy at all. That's what they want to know, right? They want to know what you're doing, what your endpoint protection is. What do you have RDP open, and are people able to access your network through RDP? Basic stuff. But 2 years ago, it says right here, 2 years ago, we were not asking detailed questions around the flavor of endpoint protection that's being used, or the degree to which RDP ports are being secured, and technologies that you're using for backup. Now we are.
Yeah.
So they're asking these questions now, but it's my opinion that they're going to be asking a hell of a lot more questions in the near future.
Yeah, I remember about, if I take in the last 2 years, out of 100 or so clients that we have, I can only think of 2 clients that ever sent us the questionnaire to fill out. And when I ask our clients, do you have a cybersecurity insurance policy? They tell us, oh yeah, of course. Yeah, we have it. It's for X dollar amount policy. But, and that just goes right to say, yeah, they weren't verifying. They were letting the end user or their client basically say, we have antivirus, or we have, this blocked, or whatever the case is. So I'm glad that they're finally doing that, but I also think they need to go a step further, as we were talking earlier about having some type of control, some type of audit, where the IT person is now coming in and actually certifying these answers.
Yeah, we're just not there yet with that industry, quite frankly. I've actually pitched that to several insurance companies, and they kind of look at me like a deer caught in headlights, because they don't really understand this. They don't know the process. The underwriters are giving them the process. Almost everybody's process looks exactly the same. And they're just getting more detail with the questions in the Excel spreadsheet, right? And the questions are less freeform and more hey, the last one I saw, it was literally Excel spreadsheet. Which antivirus product do you use?
Hmm.
Right. And it's a drop down, and it had basically every major vendor's endpoint protection product in that list, along with none. And, and you picked one. So they're doing their due diligence. They're figuring this stuff out.
Right.
You know, and they're only going to do more. They're only going to talk to more people. They're going to learn more. They're going to understand. The next. I'm telling you right now, the writing's on the wall. Right?
Hmm.
Yeah, the FBI. We covered it in the podcast last week, where the FBI comes out with their, kind of like, get ready for the weekend. Here's what you should do. But the first thing that they had was a whole section, a few paragraphs before all the recommendations on threat hunting, right?
Right.
And then insurance companies are going to be like, what are you doing for threat hunting?
Right.
Right? And like, businesses aren't going to know what threat hunting is. They're not going to know how to do it and what it's doing for them. And that's really where this stuff is going. So is there anything else in the article that I mean, it's a fairly long and in-depth article. Is there anything else that you picked up out of here that you think would be
Yeah.
important?
Yeah, I had highlighted it on my site, so I'll just read it. It says, when you think about how a sprinkler system is mandatory in order to get homeowners insurance, then we as a cyber market need to determine if the minimum requirement for cyber insurance is close, XYZ, RDP. Is it multi-factor? What are those requirements? So that was an interesting thing that he mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, it's just getting crazy. They're at a loss here. I mean, when you have these professionals out here going, there needs to be a better way, a different way. Maybe looking at cryptocurrency exchanges, right? Now here we go, blaming the cryptocurrency exchanges, or saying like, oh, there's a way that we can stop the bleeding here if we regulate, crypto payments. And
Mm-hmm.
I've said a million times, they'll just find a different way to get paid.
Right.
Right. So, this problem will continue to exist until people start doing the right thing around cybersecurity and implementing frameworks and doing things the right way, and not being called out by the insurance industry like the law industry is being called out in this article, that you're just not doing enough across the board to secure yourselves, and you're going to continue to have to deal with ransomware as a result. So I think this is a good segue to get into this Kayla report that we discovered, which has a lot of good information about what the bad guys are doing on the dark web. I wanted to blow through some of this with you, Andre,
Mm-hmm.
and talk about some of these things, because I think this is all related to cyber insurance, right? This is
Right.
all related to what they're looking to do, how they're looking to achieve things, what you need to be doing in your business, on the defensive side to deal with a lot of these things. But a lot of these things that we're going to talk about are the reason that companies are going to need to fall to cyber insurance when there's a problem. So, first thing comes up in July 2021. Kayla found 48 active threads where actors claimed they're looking to buy different kinds of accesses. 46% of them were created in that month, illustrating the demand for access listings. Right. So these are ransomware people who are looking for people with access. Right. And I don't know if this is going to go into say it in this article at all, but I'm starting to see posts on the dark web where they're looking for, let's call them unengaged employees,
Mm.
employees at companies that, you know, don't value their paycheck that much to the point where they're willing to sell out and, work with these criminals on getting ransomware onto your company's network.
Mm-hmm.
They are the traditional path was that you hook up with another cyber criminal who was good at breaking into people's networks or sending phishing campaigns, and getting people to click on those and getting in that way. But now we're seeing like just shrewd ransomware groups posting on the dark web saying, hey, look, if you work for a company and you want to deploy our ransomware, we'll hook up with you and we'll give you a cut.
Right.
Which is absolutely insane. So 40% of the actors who were looking to buy access were identified as active participants in the ransomware as a service supply chain. So this is something we've known about for a long time. Ransomware as a service where you have, operators, affiliates, and middlemen. And then it goes on to say ransomware attackers appear to form industry standards defining an ideal victim based on its revenue, geography, and excluding certain sectors and countries from its target list. We're going to show you some stuff down below that's really interesting around that. But it says, on average, the actors active in July aim to buy access to U.S. companies with revenue of more than 100 million U.S. dollars, and almost half of them refuse to buy access to companies from healthcare and education industries. I mean, that's not reassuring. That's half. So the other half are.
Right.
Ransomware attackers are ready to buy all kinds of network access, with RDP and VPN being the most basic requirement. The most common products mentioned were Citrix. I see that all the time, to be honest with you. Palo Alto, VMware, Fortinet, and Cisco. We'll talk about why that is in a few minutes. Ransomware attackers are ready to pay for access up to $100,000 US, with most actors setting the boundaries at half that price of $56,250. You need that extra $6,250 in there. The similarities between ransom-related actor requirements for victims and access listings and conditions for IABs illustrate that RAS operations act just like corporate enterprises. Well, I've been saying that forever. Yeah. These are well-run businesses, better run than a lot of MSPs that I know. Any comments there before we dive into kind of the data and the charts here? Anything that strikes you that you want to comment on?
It's interesting that they mentioned that half is avoiding healthcare and education, but we've actually seen so much articles about healthcare and education being hacked. So
well, I guess that's just saying that half of them have some kind of morals and standards where the other half don't. So I don't know how reassuring that is. There's probably, quite a few tens of thousands of hackers, right? So you still have tens of thousands of hackers that don't subscribe to that and will hack anybody.
Yeah.
So I love this right here. I'm going to try to make this bigger so shows up on the screen so people can see this. Ideal ransomware victims based on the active threads in 2021. I agree with this 100%. Based in the U.S., has more than 100 million USD, is not from education, healthcare, government, or nonprofit sectors. Most wanted access type RDP, VPN products from Citrix, Palo Alto Networks, VMware, Fortinet, and Cisco. For such access, ransomware attackers are ready to pay up to $100,000, and then it says it's the $56,250 is the average. Oh, this is such good information. So United States businesses, you are the target, right? It doesn't matter how big you are. It's here in black and white. You are the target. They'll hit other countries, Eastern European countries and things like that, and other countries around the world. It seems that a lot of these Russian countries, for whatever reason, there's actually code written into the ransomware that if you have like a Russian keyboard installed, it won't deploy the ransomware. Or you have a Russian language installed, it won't deploy the ransomware. So here you have it that they want US-based companies. More than 100 million in revenue. What are your thoughts here on this, Andre?
Well, it goes back to what we're saying. They're going for the big hitters because they know there's a large insurance policy that they can tap into.
Right. So if I do under 100 million, should I feel good about this? Should I?
Oh, no, of course not. No, because you're at the target. I was just explaining why the hackers are going after the 100 million. But yeah, if you're more than 100 million, you definitely are a target. You have, 100. You probably have at least 1,000 or more computers, I would imagine, for the amount of employees to make that type of revenue. So you're a big target because your infrastructure is bigger. You may have more legacy systems. There's supply chains. Like there's so many more variables that they can get you on.
Do you think it's that? Do you think it's partly because they believe that these companies are so big that they can't pay attention to everything that they have out there, so they're easier to break into, they're easier to attack than, say, a $5 million business?
It I don't want to say they can't pay attention. I just think that it may be too big for that IT director to manage. He may not have the right budget. There's just so much more moving wheels versus a $5 million company.
So they want more. They want companies with more than 100 million in revenue. We obviously, it's pretty straightforward. They don't want education, healthcare, government, nonprofit. That's only half of them though. So we know, there's half of them out there that will, hit those kind of companies. And that's why we see them getting hit. I would have to say healthcare, government, and education are right up there with the top ones that get hit. Not nonprofits, they get hit, but not as much as some of the other private sectors that we see. But education all the time from K-12 all the way through college. I think Howard University got hit over the Labor Day weekend. I think that made the news a little bit, but that wasn't a major cyber attack in my opinion. But here's the interesting one. Most wanted access type. They want RDP. They want VPN for specific products: Citrix, Palo Alto, VMware, Fortinet, and Cisco. What are your thoughts here? Why these products?
Especially with these larger organizations that may not be upgrading their routers, their switches on a regular cycle, they're more than likely have firmware that the IT staff have not updated. And we know Citrix has a lot of products for one thing, and they're constantly being attacked and constantly realizing that they have bugs. And essentially, if the IT staff is not updating the software on these devices, they're now going to get attacked.
So I have two perspectives I want to share here with this.
Okay.
Number one being that I agree 100% with everything that you said there. Number two, Citrix is definitely the most targeted thing by cyber criminals that I'm aware of. These guys are constantly banging on the door of Citrix trying to figure out how to break into that thing, exploit vulnerabilities, discover new vulnerabilities. It's probably the number one pen tested application that lives out there, in my opinion. The other interesting thing that I find interesting about these products are these are right in line with the products that are most popular in that $100 million range, which tells me that these guys have done their homework. They know the products that their target market uses in the same way that an MSP or a cybersecurity company would look at the products that their market implements so they can manage and support and secure them. These guys are looking at it from the angle of what products do these companies use that I can exploit, that I can take advantage of. They're the same products. They're the same ones, the same ones that everybody uses, right? So, that's what's interesting to me, right? Because I would say the MSP space has what's known as the channel, right? And we know
Right.
the vendors and products that play in that channel. And quite frankly, some of these vendors that we're looking at right here have MSP specific products that they only sell to MSPs, right? And that you can't buy them in the mid or enterprise level. And that's what I'm looking at here. I'm looking at, okay, these guys know what products this market uses. Because if we were saying they're targeting businesses that are between 5 million and 50 million, you'd see a different set of products there, in my opinion, than what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Because these middle market companies, they use Citrix, they use Palo Alto like out the wazoo. VMware, Fortinet, I was actually surprised to see that there. Cisco, obviously, has a huge target on their back based on they're pretty much at every level. They're an SMB, they're mid market, they're an enterprise. So, um, interesting stuff. The $100,000 thing here at the end. I think if you're getting into $100 million company, the minimum you could kick somebody is 100,000. So I don't know how they're pulling that number. They're probably just pulling it from what they're advertising, right? So we'll pay you up to 100,000, but
which is great margin.
Who knows what's really being paid for access?
But that's great margins, because if you have a $5 million ransom attack and it only costs you, 50 grand, that's like that's like 1% or something. It's really, really small.
Yeah, I mean, these guys down here are selling themselves short if they're only charging 56 for, access to $100 million network.
I know a mastermind group they can join.
Active threads of initial access buyers in July of 2021. So created in July of 2021 were almost half. Right? So this shows you the activities going up. 54% existed. So of everything that was there, half of it was created in July of 2021 compared to everything before that. So that's a lot of activity. Right? So you would think, right? If you think about this, Andre, this is a leading indicator. Like when you look at this kind of stuff, and this is kind of how we look at things. If you start to see July 2021 requests for more access, right? We want, we're putting out posts or threads about initial access. That is increased, right? So now they want this activity is increased. You got to think that it's going to take some time for this to mature through and for them to get access to these networks.
Yeah.
So this started in July. When do they start to reap what they sowed in July, right? Does it start in September? Does it start in October, November, December? Maybe it takes 6 months. It'll be interesting to see the correlation between this number in July and when, we start to see attacks creep up again.
And remember, we know that it's usually they're in the systems for 120 days before they do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's 4 months.
So let's go access. So they're saying I'm looking for, this is everything that you're seeing out on these threads, right? Buying access to corporations. I will buy access. We want your access. We want to buy access. And the access is getting tougher. Absolutely. Because people are getting smarter to it. They're not leaving their RDP open like they were before. So we're making access more difficult. Access is also becoming more difficult because companies are getting on board with security and awareness training, and employees know what to click on and what not to click on. But access isn't going away because your employees, if you don't treat them well, if you don't pay them well, you're going to see those types of things becoming an issue for companies in the future. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I would even say this could even be where it's a leaked password. So I mean, it's kind of stupid to do it, but I would basically be, if I was this untrusted employee, I'm basically selling my username, my password. So the question now, maybe we could talk about for a moment is, let's just say someone does sell an employee, a rogue employee sells their access. What can a business owner do to not only say monitor, but to once the bad guy gets the information, is there anything that now can be done that a business owner should have in place that could potentially thwart that?
Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at this. I'm looking at what I'm reading up on the screen here. Can you see this?
Yeah.
So somebody, we're all we know what these things are called. So do you remember the Microsoft Exchange issue where they were able to put these shells on what were called shells on Microsoft Exchange servers that were exposed to the web?
Yes.
Somebody's asking like why are shells mostly used, right? Like what are they using shells for, right? And it says it right here. So you can deploy info stealing malware to inject malicious scripts into websites, cryptocurrency mining, spam, and phishing campaigns. So they use web shells. Like why it's important to make sure that things like your Microsoft Exchange, when Microsoft comes out and says, hey, your Microsoft Exchange has a vulnerability and you need to patch it, the question shouldn't be, can I get ransomware? No, well, no, you can't get ransomware, so I'm not going to patch. That shouldn't be the decision making. They will use these shells to do other things so they can get access to your network, right? And then once they have access, they can sell the access to your network to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what they go on and explain here. So 40% of the analyzed threads were created by actors related to RAS supply chain operators, affiliates, or middlemen. So just, Russian speaking, they're just trying to get, this is, see how you see right here, it says Zoom revenue. That's Zoom info.
Mm-hmm.
They have like subscriptions to Zoom info, and USA, Canada, Australia, Great Britain, right? These are the companies. They'll do all areas except medicine and state institutions. And they'll buy from 3,000 to 100K. We take it to work. And then, this is all how they communicate, all how they find people, and they just need to find somebody. And then active threats, US 40, almost half of the threats are US, and then the rest are spread out between Canada, Australia, and Europe. So revenue, they go into talking about, these are real messages, how you're going to get paid. They'll tell you, what they'll pay you. We buy VPN, RDP, Citrix access with domain admin rights.
Mm-hmm.
So they want full access. They don't want you just to give them something where they have to then get further access. They want full access. They had the blacklisted sectors, blacklisted countries. I don't know if they have. Yeah, we do not work in RU. So Russian is mainly. So some of them, others countries unwanted include South America and third world countries, most likely due to low chance of getting financial gain. Yeah. So mitigation measures for enterprise defenders, and this is good. So they go into how do we deal with this, and this is more for the enterprise. So cybersecurity awareness training, that's for whether you're in enterprise or small business. Regular vulnerability monitoring and patching to continue and protect their entire network. Very important to do. I think most companies are probably only doing this at the operating system level. It needs to be done at every level. And, all your devices, everything that you have plugged into your network needs to be updated. Targeted and automated monitoring of key assets to immediately detect threats emerging from the cybercrime and underground ecosystem. That can be a lot of different things, but knowing what traffic your network is communicating with, and if that traffic is potentially talking to some kind of Tor site or some kind of known malware or bad actor site. There's services and there's and there's things out there that you can use to monitor this stuff either on your firewall or in other places, but not monitoring it. I think we're not in that world anymore where you can just plug, a firewall in and not monitor at some level where the traffic's going and making sure it's going to legitimate places versus illegitimate places. So anything you want to wrap up with and share here, Andre? A lot of data here.
No, a lot of data, and just I just go back to that July thing. I think that was an eye opener of how it's in the next X amount of months. It's like they're getting their call centers ready and getting their ducks in a row to start something.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show you that, I mean, maybe it's a sign of desperation for access, maybe, but I don't think that these guys will have much trouble pivoting to how they get access, right? They have a lot of different tools in their chest to gain access, whether it be through brute force, stolen credentials, phishing, malware, exploitable products like Microsoft Exchange, where they're able to dump a web shell into and then maintain persistent access. And then just hiring your employees to give them the access that they want. That's the next flavor of this. This is going to be something, and God knows when, in 6 months, 9 months, that we're going to hear of a major ransomware attack. And Tesla's already stopped 2 employees from being compromised in this manner.
Wow.
That was probably in the news about a year ago or so. So it's only a matter of time before the employees become part of this attack chain.
There's already a word. Isn't that called corporate espionage?
In a way, yeah. I look at corporate espionage as more or less other companies spying on other companies for what they're doing. But it's extortion at the end of the day, because that employee is going to be extorted, if they even get paid. So, all right, brother. Oh, Randy, we miss you. Hope you're feeling better.
Yeah.
Our third leg on our stool here is missing today, as you know. Mr. Bryan could not join us today. He's not feeling well, so we wish him a speedy recovery. Hopefully, it's just a little cold, nothing major. So, anything else you want to share with the audience before we wrap up today, Andre?
Nope, we're good, man.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Remember, share the show. Stay safe out there. Do all the things we pointed out in here. Remember, the attackers are coming for you. We just showed you the data. So be safe. Take care. We'll see you next week.
Bye.